Right, and it appears we are live. What's up, everybody? It's G Mr. Drew here to welcome you to another episode of the Andrew Glowczewski Experience. This is going to be episode 253. We're going to continue these props, but we're moving on from shotguns to grenade launchers, which I thought was a big jump, but uh, in terms of organization and each grade of weapon going up and up and up. But I guess it kind of makes sense that a grenade launcher would come after a shotgun, considering all the boo-wap pow boomstick version of it all. Hopefully this one will be the beginning of a new series of like going back to well lit streams. I went and got a new light, and yeah, even though it was on sale, I still spent a pretty penny on a single light bulb. And so it appears to be much brighter, much lighter, and everything like that. Oh man, now we got this shadow over here. But it looks like everything is where it needs to be as far as like being well lit and looking nice and, picking up less shadow. I wonder if I can get that out of there. Hold on. Let me see if I angle this a little bit differently. If it'll... There we go. Yeah, get a bit of the armature out. And yeah, so we are moving down to the bottom of the page. So I'm actually gonna have to move the camera a bit and angle it. There we go. Should be good here. And yeah, man, we're gonna move on to some grenade launchers. So I broke it down, and it was kind of weird because I thought that they were attachments to weapons, but it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems to be like it's a weapon in itself. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll just do it that way. I got some Secrets of Dune on YouTube. I got his channel playing just because he has a bunch of Dune stuff. I guess in the last week, they had some stuff going on. So this particular video I have going in the background is Hans Zimmer's Dune sketchbook, which I saw on Amazon and I thought about getting, but I was like, oh, that probably doesn't have any pictures on it. But here's an impressions video on it, so let's listen and see what it is. Because if it does have like anything to do with any sort of visuals, because I'm a visual guy. Um, if it's all words or things that I don't understand, like music notes and stuff like that, then there wouldn't be any reason for me to get it. But the cover looks badass. And I've always judged books by their covers. So, anyways, let's get into it.
Hey everyone, Hans Zimmer released his Dune sketchbook soundtrack with experimental sounds that he made for the Dune movie. In it, he creates some very interesting sounds. In this video, we'll be exploring the audioscape he creates in each track. If you like these videos, please don't forget to give me a like rating. It helps YouTube's algorithms find my videos and shares them with more people, and it's one easy way to help the Dune community grow. If you like these videos, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and click the bell so that you can be first to be notified of new videos. Now that is out of the way, let's get straight into this episode. So this is my impression of the Dune sketchbook soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. The first track, Song of the Sisters, incorporates the vocals that Hans Zimmer was talking about in the behind-the-scenes footage at the IMAX preview, where he said that the human voice is very important to the Dune soundtracks. Then it carries you into an ethereal soundscape, and it gives you a sense of the Bene Gesserit's hidden power. Then it picks up the pace with whispers, and we get to hear a soundbite similar to what we heard in the Hyder character trailer. Then it picks up a very rhythmic beat, and it kind of encapsulates the danger of the Bene Gesserit, and perhaps the horror behind wielding that power. I really hoped that this track would play over the attack by the Harkonnen, because it encapsulates this horror and this feverish nightmare so well. So having this cue appear on the sketchbook could mean that this isn't going to appear in the film itself, at least in this form, but a similar sound to it may appear. Then as the track goes on, it kind of reminds me of his Mission Impossible work, a little bit. Then I think you can hear Buddhist chanting, because I recognize the word kyo. And kyo means teaching or the voice of Buddha. So it seems like a full Buddhist prayer of some kind. And then you get this really beautiful cue, which is like a chant, but a choral chant. And it almost reminds me of the Lord of the Rings soundtrack by Howard Shore, the chanting of the elves in the Lothlorien track. But it's a much more darker chant. It's a much more serious tone. And this chant grows and grows, rising into an epic chorus. Then the notes start to remind me of the kind of work you would hear in the Queen of the Damned soundtrack by Jonathan Davis and Richard Gibbs. It kind of reminds me of these vampires.
Dang, he's talking about Mission Impossible, Queen of the Damned.
And the 300 Rise of the Empire soundtrack by Junkie XL. Track 2, I See You in My Dreams, is almost an elongated elaboration of Paul's dream. So if you like those cues, it's really worth listening to that track and just sitting back and soaking it all in, because it's a really atmospheric track. And this might sound strange, but if you're familiar with the Message soundtrack and movie, it almost sounds a little like Maurice Jarre's soundtrack. Let me know what you think. It does feel like there are Middle Eastern tones throughout the soundtrack. And then we get the singular voices again, and there is nothing purer than the human voice. And Hans Zimmer is definitely focusing on that. And then it rises into an epic crescendo, and it's pretty good. And I think that Buddhist chant comes back in again. And then you hear a Middle Eastern instrument and a woman speaking over it. I don't recognize the language, but it's definitely not Arabic. It could be Romani, or it could be the actual language that was created for the film. I'm not sure. Track 3 is called House of Trainees, and it starts off with that beautiful singular voice which we hear in the second Dune trailer at the start. And it took me a good few minutes to work out whether or not this was Lisa Gerard. It really did sound like her. It was wishful thinking on my part.
Is she the one who did the
she's involved with the
opening?
soundtrack, unfortunately, which is a great shame.
The opening of that
really wish
Wolves
that she
show
was
on
involved,
HBO?
especially considering that Hans worked with her on the Gladiator soundtrack, which is arguably one of his best soundtracks. I don't recognize the language again with this vocal, but if anyone knows, please let me know in the comment section below. It almost sounds like a Gaelic or Scottish song that would be sung in the hills. It sounds quite folklore in its origins. And then you hear one of the strangest cues I think I've ever heard from Hans Zimmer, which is this rock mixed with bagpipes, mixed with metallic chains and sounds and bells. It's very, very interesting. It's very different. And I like the idea of the bagpipes being associated with the Atreides. But this track reminds me of an anime soundtrack. It doesn't seem to be interpreted by an American composer. It sounds like a Japanese composer trying to interpret the bagpipes and those instruments from a Japanese perspective and not from an American composer perspective. It's not your typical American composer angle. Honestly, this track sounds like it's straight out of an anime. I think the Asian audience is going to love it. Moving on to track 4, The Shortening of the Way. It starts with very Middle Eastern tones. And I believe
Unless it's a book that's actually like an album or something, I don't know.
The same type of cues that we heard in Paul's Dream again, which appears over the sound ones.
Why would you call an album a sketchbook?
And then the track descends into a kind of slight horror.
Artists.
And this reminds
Artists in their crazy ways.
Demons and the Da Vinci Code. But again, it reminds me of the 300 Rise of an Empire soundtrack. Is it just me? Let me know what you think. Then we move on to track 6, Moon over Caladan. And this is probably my favourite track from the Dune sketchbook. There's so much to say about this track. Right from the start, it has a feel of this David Lynch's Dune score by Toto. And it reminds me of the same Caladan as depicted in that film. It starts with very somber, ethereal voices. It builds this mood slowly, and then it finally begins to ascend into this strange, powerful statement. It's almost like waves crashing. It's exactly like Caladan is supposed to sound. It's literally like Hans Zimmer is interpreting
Man, this is a very
movement of
truncated
bullets and the crushing of
sketch.
waves as they slowly roll
This
the
gun is
enemy
actually a
lines.
lot
And
longer,
it does remind me of similar cues from the
but
Toto soundtrack.
I'd have to draw it really
But then it
small.
begins to rise into a strange ascension, almost like enlightenment, with the choral voices in the background and the rising notes. And it's almost like Toto's soundtrack reinterpreted into this new creation, something beautiful, something definitive. It's almost like honoring the past, Dune's past, and creating something new for the future of Dune. It's like an acknowledgement of all of the love that people had for Dune, whether it be from the films, from the miniseries, and from the books themselves, but in particular David Lynch's Dune and the Toto soundtrack, which Denis Villeneuve was a fan of himself. He's used it in his work previously. And it's almost like Hans Zimmer is telling us, yes, this is good, and this is how I interpret it. But it's almost like a definitive piece for Hans Zimmer. It feels and sounds like one of the great symphonies of old. It's almost like this is Hans Zimmer at his best. It captures the tragedy and the melancholy and the yearning of more. It really captures Paul's story and Paul's arc and the story of House Atreides. And just the title of the track alone, Moon over Caladan, evokes so much to me. Because moons are so significant in Dune. The mouse symbol is in the moon of Arrakis, and Paul looks at that moon in Caladan as I imagine it in my head, just from the track alone. And he sees a moon and it seems so ordinary and almost insignificant, but it will carry so much more meaning for him in the future. And the moon is one of the great symbols of Dune. But the track is also incredibly beautiful. And it reminds me of something that would roll over the Dune credits, and it's something that would be so evocative. Track 7 is the Mind Killer, and it feels purely nightmarish, and it evokes the same style and sense that was in the Batman Begins trilogy, and his work on that. The track lives up to its name. It is almost like an interpretation of what a mind killer is, an interpretation of fear. Then we can kind of hear these Mongolian chants, these guttural sounds, then a dark choir of male and female voices, and it picks up a momentum and it has this heavy beat to it. And it's almost like a dark rave music type scenario. And it kind of reminds me a little of FK Twig sound, a little bit. These non-conventional sounds and a truncated type beat. And I think it intercuts this Hindi or Sanskrit language. I'm not too sure where it comes from, but it sounds like a chant from India, interwoven with these Mongolian sounds as well. Then it all comes together and meshes together into this great beat, and it's really catchy. But then it ends with the same female vocals that we hear at the end of the Paul's Dream track. Track 8, called Shai Hulud, features more ethereal Mongolian guttural sounds. And then it sounds like Paul's Dream again. It seems that Paul's Dream is the main theme that this whole soundtrack is based on. And perhaps even the Dune movie soundtrack will all be based around this Paul's Dream theme. And it has similar sounds to the Moon over Caladan track, kind of like a companion track to the Moon over Caladan. And then it ends with I think it's the duduk instrument, but it sounds very similar to the music that was used in the Dune 2000 miniseries in the soundtrack composed by Graham Revel, which I personally appreciated and I really enjoyed. Brian Tyler also used that same instrument, I believe, in his Children of Dune soundtrack. Grains of Sand is the final track on the Dune sketchbook, and it immediately starts off with a quick pace, and it almost reminds me of something that you would hear when the Fremen were trying to ride a sandworm. It's got this kind of anime feel to it again, this kind of Attack on Titan type feel, and instead of attacking a Titan, they'd be approaching a giant sandworm. So I really enjoyed this track for what it was trying to do. It may not be specifically for a sandworm, but that's the impression I get. Again, anime watchers and soundtrack lovers are going to really enjoy this track. So that was my review of
Are we all the way at the bottom here? Come on.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't
I gotta
forget
lower
to
this shot a little bit more.
subscribe and click the bell so that you can be first to be notified of new videos. If you enjoy my content and wish to see more, you can subscribe to my channel as a member, where you'll receive access to exclusive content, secret content, and more. You can also become a Patreon. Thank you to all of my subscribers, channel members, and patrons
All
for your
right.
support. And until next time, see you soon.
So yeah, this is a very truncated version. Like right here, it's supposed to be a lot more space. I'm sure there's supposed to be a lot more space back here. Um, Even in this area, like everything is kind of squished, but it makes it a little bit bulkier, which is fine for what I'm trying to accomplish.
Making a movie is always a gamble, but in a way, Dune is a gamble twice as much. It opens as Dune Part 1. How does it feel to create a movie that has to stand on its own, but also be an opener for a whole world?
Yeah, we can say it's a gamble. I mean, it's like a. But I thought that it was a better idea to do that than to try to compress all that story into one movie. So I like challenges. I like for me that was part of the game to approach this way, and this
Okay.
is what I like. Yeah, it's daring. I love the challenge. For me, it was like. But I will say this. I kept in my mind as I was doing the movie. In the back of my mind, I said, it is the only one. I'm putting all my joy and I put a lot of it, all my energy into it. Like if it was the last movie. Anyway, when you do a movie, you always do it like if it was your last movie. So it's like that's the way to do it.
The idea of tackling a pre-existing
Oop,
property that's so
sorry.
popular, that's been filmed before, that has many fans that are rabid and waiting for for Villeneuve's version. Was there a pressure on you, on both of you, in fact, because you're creating Paul Atreides, but people has their own Paul Atreides in mind? Was that a big pressure, thinking of all the fans that know the book by heart?
Yes. The thing is that the idea was really to go back to the source material, to the book, and I tried with my team to be as close to the spirit. In fact, the good news is that I'm probably among the biggest fan of this book. I love this book since decades, since maybe 40 years. So I mean, I am one of these hardcore fans. So my toughest judge was myself. So that I knew, and that was difficult to deal with that judge. I will say yes.
And what about you?
I would say less of pressure from the previous iterations with huge respect for the David Lynch version, the computer game, the sci-fi version, and more pressure from the amalgamation, as you put it, of a projection of Paul that people had, from being a fan of the book, or, also because it's been a while since, for the first time ever, perhaps, this sort of, technology available to the film too, that an adaptation has been able to be done like this, and also with a master of cinema right now doing it. So I think the art takes place in the head of the audience members, so people will judge for themselves.
An interesting thing about the film is that it conveys lots of information from the book without saddling it with exposition and explanation. Gives a lot of it for granted, but you understand everything. How did you work to preserve the ideas while not explaining them?
Yeah, that was one of the big challenges. It's a book that contains a lot of background story, very complex cultures colliding together, and to try to preserve as much of the details, the colors, the texture, the depth of the book, still not overwhelming the audience with exposition. That was not done over a weekend. Honestly, it was a long process of writing, of meditating, of dreaming, and I will say that the movie got better from the screenplay to the shooting stage to the editing room. It's really a movie that evolved through time as we were making it. It's like, in fact, the answer is a lot of work to say that.
Some more work is about the language, the way you convey the idea of telepathic communication with the gestures. And was that a nightmare, or was that easily solved at the beginning of the project?
No, that was fun to do. That I had a lot of pleasure. I came and this is an idea that came from the book, but it's like it's something that gave me access to the strategies, the inner thought of the characters and the strategies so it's no that was just a lot of fun to do. And it's a sign language that was designed, looked up by a language expert in LA that designed all the gestures, so the actors were studying this new language that was a little
Maybe.
Yeah, which happened in a way in Arrival, but that's why I was asking. Something about Paul Atreides. He's a reluctant leader. He's not the first idea you get of an action hero because he becomes a hero, but also when he kills for the first time, he has compassion for the person. So how did you work on this character, and then how did you choose Timothy for the part?
Well, I love that contradiction. I've never worked on a movie of this size before. I keep saying it, but I just read in a book recently. It's a living paradox, not a contradiction. And I feel that's perhaps the place that Paul gets to by the end of the movie. And certainly not at the beginning, certainly not when he's on the, sort of hero, anti-hero's journey that he's launched on after the Gom Jabbar scene. As far as him to play, that's what a gift to be able to play that in a movie of this size and not to play an archetype or some sort of pastiche of a character, but rather play someone who is in deep conflict about the things that every young teenager goes through in some way, but also the pressures that are unique to Paul, unique to the situation of Muad'Dib, prophecy of Bene Gesserit, and with Denis' sensibilities, I won't speak out of turn, but I feel, just looking at his other films, he's as invested, if not more invested, in character development, behavior, as he is in all these things that are above my pay grade, the scope of the film, the sets, the sound design, music, so I think it all bled into each other.
And how about your choice of
Yeah, that's always embarrassing for Timothy when I start to talk about that, but I have to say the truth. The thing is that Timothy is one of the best actors of his generation, if not the best, and I needed someone that will have the strong shoulder enough to be able to carry the weight, because we are just above his shoulder for 2 hours and a half. It's just like we are. He's almost in every shot, every scene. He's conveying a very it's a simple story, but with a complex character development and the story's relationship with his mother. It's like I needed a very, very, very strong actor with a very strong charisma, and someone that Timothy, if I may, is a brilliant. He's a very intelligent, high intelligence in the eyes, and a lot of wisdom for his age. I was always impressed by Timothy's intelligence, and at the same time, he looks tremendously young, so young on camera. So that was a good combination for me. He's poetry, so I had no plan B. I had Timothy in mind, and I'm so grateful that today we're here.
Thank you.
What was it like to act on such a huge scope movie with special effects after making smaller movies such as the Woody Allen one or Call Me By Your Name? So completely different set, I assume.
I must say, special effects on this, I think I shot 2 scenes with a green screen in total on this. These sets were practical. The ornithopter was practical, and we shot in exteriors. We were either in Jordan or Abu Dhabi in the desert. So from that perspective, no difference. From the perspective of the amount of crew that were there, sometimes numbering the hundreds, sometimes they're splinter crews, that becomes like a whole ship. And also the relationship with the director, and after everything that Denis just said, in addition to the experience I had, of course, my gratitude is in the 10,000% to him. And yet I did have this awareness on set where I thought, man, Denis is the chief of like a huge warship right now. And he's not here to worry about me or not even all the actors. It's also his job, it's everything. So I had a huge respect for, working with the director for the first time that wasn't, in respect to public technique and S&D movies that, like the ones you alluded to that are smaller in size, this is a whole different thing. And without talking too much, I'm sorry, I gotta say, on the flip of that, if the first couple of days felt like that, or if some days on set where fans and machines feel enormous, Denis' creative teams are a lot from his other films, so it just felt like stepping into a family, into a carnival. And as Javier said in a different interview today, it felt like an indie film with a big budget. Indie film on steroids.
Yes. I try to preserve the intimacy with the camera at the beginning. So
Yeah. The whole time it felt like.
the whole time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you again for June part.
Oh yeah, sure.
Grazie.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Finalmente è arrivato Dune. Come si sente?
I would say a relief.
Devo dire che mi sento sollevato e profondamente felice di poter finalmente condividere questo film. È un momento molto prezioso per me, molto importante. Grazie. C'è un sentiero che unisce Arrival, Blade Runner 2049 e DUNE. Tutti i film che ho fatto hanno un approccio differente. Il mio tentativo è sempre di fare qualcosa di diverso, di usare diversamente il linguaggio cinematografico, però tutti i film sono uniti, indubbiamente. È preoccupato della reazione dei grandi ammiratori del romanzo di Frank Herbert. Devo dire che i fan più difficili sono stato io, perché io adoro i suoi romanzi, li adoro da 30 anni e più. E ho dovuto combattere con me stesso sulle decisioni che
Okay.
Regista di Dune, voi forse non avete idea delle urla, dell'attesa che proprio oltre a vedersi si sente, si percepisce di questo film e di questo red carpet. E sta arrivando l'uomo più atteso di Venezia 78, Timothy Chalamet. Hi, nice to meet you. Can you
molto
stand
piacere,
here? Thank you,
Timothy.
Timothy.
Grazie di essere con me.
Everyone was expecting you, and everyone was expecting June.
Okay, so it's in English and they're translating it to Italian. It's like, why the translation? Just upload the one words in English. Whatever. Whatever.
Buongiorno, siamo qua per la conferenza stampa del film DUNE, presentato fuori concorso, e al tavolo a partire dalla destra in fondo Javier Bardem, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, il regista del film Denis Villeneuve, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya e Josh Brolin. I'd like to start with a question, just to break the ice to Denis, because I understand that this book has been with you for a very, very long time. And so what is it that made it so important for you when you were young and now?
I kept saying to the cast, push the button. I think that when I read it as a kid, I was like struck by Paul's journey, the way he finds his identity, comfort into another culture, his relationship with nature, and his feeling, his melancholy, and this beautiful feeling of isolation that the character was going through, and struggling with all this heritage, the weight of an heritage on his shoulder. That's something that deeply moved me, that at heart and being.
Hi, this is Matisse Meissen from RTV Slovenia. I have a question for Timothy. The character of Paul Atreides has already given us one iconic performance, namely by Kyle MacLachlan in the David Lynch film. So I wondered, while you were preparing for the role, did you use that performance or as any kind of template or inspiration, or did you prefer to stay away from that as much as you could and build something that is completely your own? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. The latter. Because that was a lot, sorry. Huge respect for Kyle's performance, and I love that version, and I watched it about 2 months before we started shooting. I've been fortunate enough to work on other projects that have had prior iterations with great actors in them, and I have huge respect for all of them, but when Denis Villeneuve asks you to do a movie and do his version of a movie, you forget all that, and you make yourself as humble as the source material asks you to be, and I guess just wanted it like that.
Yeah.
Stephen Shaver here for the Boston Herald. Denny, I wonder when you got to do this massive movie, which is called Part 1, what did you find was your biggest challenge, actually? And secondly, because it is Part 1, what is the benchmark when we'll find out we can have Part 2?
The biggest challenge doing Dune was by far to deal and master with Timothy's hair. Because it's alive. And I had to direct Timothy, and I had to direct his haircut. And you guys don't. Okay, sorry. The biggest challenge I will say was to try to find a balance between. There's the book is so rich, and it's a book that takes all its strength into its details, and it was really to try to find an equilibrium between the information that someone that doesn't know the book at all, the amount of information that the audience that don't know the book, the amount of information they will need to understand the movie, without crushing them with exposition, and trying to be, of course, as cinematographic as possible. So it's like that was the big challenge, not trying to find the right amount of information so the audience could follow the story correctly and follow this adventure. About the benchmark, that I'm not the one who will draw the line. I think that one thing for sure is that the Warner Brother and Legendary are proud of the movie right now, and putting all their efforts to bring it to the world on the big screen, which I'm very happy. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, hopefully, so at the end of the day, these are, of course, difficult times for everybody, and we all agree safety first. And but if the audience feels comfortable and there's a safe environment, I encourage them to see this movie on the big screen, because it has been dreamed, it has been designed, it has been made, it has been shot. Thinking IMAX, and the sound design, everything. It's when you watch this movie on the big screen, it's almost like an IMAX. So it's a physical experience. You know, we try to design a movie that will be as immersive as possible. So that's why and for me, the big screen is part of the language.
Hello, I'm Beba Blanes from Cadena Ser Radio, Spain. I would like to ask to Javier Bardem, because Dune, I think, in my opinion, talks about one of the most important problems today, environment. You are a green activist, and I wonder if for you it's important that movies like that talk about this. If my colleagues don't kill me, I ask you if you could answer in English and in Spanish, please. If you don't mind, of course.
In English and in Spanish will take a lot of time, no? First in English, I think, yes, the movie, the author was ahead of his time, and he was already concerned about how the world was going towards, in the sense of losing the capacity to have us all in good health, as long as we violate its limits. And here we are today, dealing with that, thinking that it's something that is going to happen in the next future, but it's happening as we speak, which is kind of scary. It's on the governments, it's on the big corporations, the solution to really make a big step ahead and really change our minds about how we behave in this world. And it's a change of style, of lifestyle for all of us, and it's kind of scary. But it's either that or a disaster, as the people who know say. So my character in this movie thinks that way as well, and he's defending the environmental aspect of the planet in order to at least make his tribe, his people survive. And I was absolutely linked emotionally or conceptually to that color of the character immediately when I read it in the book and when I read it in the script. So it is important that in a movie like this, Denis and the whole crew, the whole people have made this amazing movie tells that part of the story because it's one step more in the right direction. En español no puedo porque si no sería demasiado. Gracias. Por tiempo me dicen. Gracias, perdona.
Hello, Kuriko from Japan, Eiga.com. I have a question to Mr. Villeneuve and one question to Ms. Zendaya and Mr. Chalamet. To Mr. Villeneuve, I have an impression that this film is politically very relevant today. So I would not say its message, but there is a political context subject in it. So could you talk about the process of adaptation? And the question to Ms. Zendaya, how about your hairstyle? I'm joking. What your presence is very, very big impact. So how do you prepare to this role? And one question to Mr. Chalamet. This is very
Goddamn,
epic
3 questions,
story,
lady?
and your presence is very, very strong in the whole movie. So personally, what does it mean to you, this movie? And what impact do you think in your career? Thank you.
To start quickly, I will say that when Frank Herbert wrote Dune in the 60s, back then he was like doing like a portrait of the 20th century, but I think it became more and more through time, like prediction of what will happen in the 21st. And sadly, the book is by far more relevant today about the blend of the danger of the blend between the cross mix between religion and politics, the danger of messianic figures, the impact of colonialism, as I point out, the problem with the environment, and as this book stayed with me through the years, but it just felt more and more and more through time, more and more relevant. And so I think that sadly, I wish it was not the case, but I think the movie it will speak to the world right now more than it would have done 40 years ago, I will say. Yeah, I will say that about the environment to add to what Javier said. I think that future generations will judge us. I think it's time to get angry right now. I think it's time to push, to make changes. I think I still have hope, and I think that it's time to get into action. I think like there's as an example, there's an election right now in Canada. They don't talk enough about environment. That should be the priority. That's the thing we should talk about in this election right now. They don't talk about it that much. It's just like another subject. That should be the subject. Anyway, I don't want to be moralistic. I just think that's it's about survival, and that's what this book is about: surviving.
Hi. Well, I didn't really get much time to shoot with these amazing people, some of which I got to meet today. And I was extremely, I guess you would say, intimidated because obviously there's so many people here that I admire, and then the opportunity to work with Denis, I think he's an extraordinary filmmaker and has always been someone that I also admired. So stepping into that, I was like, I don't have much time, and there's so many people that I have to hopefully stand next to and do somewhat of a good job, you know, and it was intimidating and scary, but as soon as I got there, there was such a warmth and an embrace that I felt immediately comfortable and taken care of, and all I had to do was be guided, and Denny opened up and explained the world to me, and was able to do that in a short amount of time, and everybody was so welcoming, and it was a beautiful experience. I was only there for a few days, but I felt like I had been very quickly a part of a family. So yeah, I appreciate all of you guys for making it such a wonderful time, and I feel extremely grateful to just be a piece of this really gorgeous puzzle that is Dune, you know. So yeah, very, very humbled, and it was a special time, but just trusted him.
I'm gonna try to go quickly too, because I know we're gonna get some other questions, but simply put, this was the honor of a lifetime for me. And like how Zendaya just put it, in some way I just had to be guided, even though it was a project size I hadn't been on before. And every person and every artist I'm fortunate enough to sit up here with right now, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I was able to lean on each one emotionally at some point over the course of these 4 or 5 months shoot. These are all actors I've seen in projects that I admire. That's not actors blowing smoke. That's really, like, if we had more time, I can have a longer conversation about it. And now I'm proud to call these, you know, my sisters and brothers. If that's with everyone up here. I hope we get to do a second one. That'd be a dream. And yet, in some way, I'm simply grateful for the experience of doing this. And Josh Brolin said it beautifully this morning in a different interview. You make the process of making the thing is different than the putting it out. So there's 3 versions of the movie. There's a movie you read, there's a movie you make, and there's the movie they edit. And now there's the movie we're putting out there. So hopefully people go see it. But this has already been a dream come true.
Speaking of guidance, I'd like to bring in the conversation Rebecca Ferguson and Oscar Isaac, who played Paul's parents. And Oscar, you have the power of war, and Rebecca, you have the power of the mind. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between your characters and Paul?
There we go. That's a good question.
Yes. Hi. Hello. War. I don't know. I feel like what Duke Leto brings, which is maybe very specific, is in some way he's the most recognizably human. Meaning he has no special powers. He has no. He has nothing that is that any of us don't have, other than being the ruler of Caladan. So you know, and the fact that he's knowingly marching towards his demise and knows that, and that's from the book too. I mean, from the second people start talking about him, they're saying, you know, he's not going to make it, and yet there is still this tension about what he's going to do and if he's going to continue, and you know, not to get too highfalutin about it, but it's very similar to, we all know that we're going to die, yet we still have to continue and make choices, and so I think as far as a figure for his son, trying to bring some sense of humanity and nobility not in the blue blood kind of way, but nobility in terms of seeking a higher level of consciousness and a higher way of leading a nation and leading a people, especially coming into this place. Like, how do you inherit all of this ugliness and all of this evil and all these machinations that are out of your control, and try to move towards a more noble state of being? I think that's the big thing that he's trying to give to the son, that has been prophesied to be some messiah or something. But as far as he's concerned, as long as you can hold on to that humanity and the higher idea of humanity, you'll be okay. And it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them. That's something they had to talk a lot between Rebecca and I, about how much do they know about what each parent is doing? How much does he know about all of this, you know, manipulations over the centuries and what this means? You know, it starts with this thing that she was supposed to have a daughter, and she gave me a son instead. You know, she broke the rules out of some sense of love. Is it because it was a sense of love, or is it because she already knew it was time for this Messiah to show up? So it's just, it's amazing, because the more questions you ask, the deeper and deeper and deeper it goes.
Hello. It's so interesting just listening to the interviews that we're doing and listening to other people's answers, because what I love is you can do films and you can ride along, I feel, on other people's description or character description or emotion, and I feel we all have our own identity, really and truly in this. We all have our own relationships to each other and to the spice and to, you can't just ride along. I mean, for me, or for Jessica, it's such a mind game and an emotional one as well, that balance of being a mother, but also having such a strong belief in something greater than just being a mother. And one isn't better or doesn't sort of outsmart the other, but you know, she comes from this sisterhood, Bene Gesserit, who are there to manipulate the outcome of the universe, basically. And then conflicted with this passion and love for her belief. And also, I believe, we spoke a lot about true love. What happens when you fall in love? And the request of creating a son versus my chores. Which one do you go for? You know, it's a constant struggle. And you say mind, I mean, this is her entire identity. It's the mind struggle, but the emotional protection of children, of your child, of your loved ones, and knowing what is right. It's and finding those lovely balances. Thankfully, I had a director helping me from one emotion to the other. I was quite confused sometimes. But yeah.
To speak to Denis as well, you know, it was something that we constantly spoke about, and trying to find that balance and how, you know, how much we reveal of what they know, and looking, you know, constantly going back to the book and talking about scenes and what can we add, what do we not need, how can we deepen the feeling of the family, and particularly the emotional battle between duty and, you know, love of your family, wanting to keep your family safe.
Nicely said, Oscar. That was good.
Thank you. I was just looking at you for.
And Rebecca.
Hi, Helen Barlow from Australia. This is a question to Josh. I saw the Stephen Colbert thingy question thing with a lot of you, and you were like the class clown, and every time your name is mentioned, Timothy smiles. So were you kind of the class clown on the set, and it's hilarious that your first line is "I am smiling" when you're not smiling. And how was it to play this stern military man, given that you are this gregarious kind of person in real life, and how was it on the set?
I apologize, madam. Josh is not allowed to speak.
You put it in my contract. Wow, man. There's so much to say. There's so much intelligence up here that I can't match. I think I was on set as Denis' friend, and I was somehow worked into the movie. I don't even know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if the character is actually in the book. But I'm paid to make people laugh, apparently, even in dramas. So I have the power of the testicles in this movie. Yes, I said it. And that's what I represent. I'm here to protect the Duke. That's all I know. I'm listening to all these, what I find fascinating in all seriousness, which is very difficult for me. What I find fascinating is what we created before we started the movie is not what we're experiencing now. You know, you have ideas of what this was and what Frank Herbert Jr. created. I just for a moment imagined Frank Herbert Jr. listening to us right now and to think, like, would he be proud? Is this what he intended? Was he talking about this when he was talking to Alan Watts in the 60s? Was he imagining us when he did LSD in the 60s? Whatever it is.
He saw you for sure. He imagined all the big rolling. LSD and the rolling.
But he, I think he intended something very powerful And when I saw the movie, that's what I saw. You know, I know we're kind of supposed to talk away from kind of the fandom of Dune, but when I saw it, when the movie was screened for me, I brought somebody who was a major fan and who read the series probably 3 times over when they were very young, 8 years old, 9 years old. And we screened the movie. There was a long pause afterwards, and this man is 48 years old and from New York City. And he started screaming at the top of his lungs. And he said, "That's what I saw. That's what I saw as a kid. Yes, yes, yes," you know. And when you see that kind of reaction, you realize it hit somebody on a very visceral level, you know. Allows for regression and allows for something else to happen other than just a cinematic spectacle.
Bonjour, c'est Louis-Philippe Ouimet de Radio-Canada. Une question en français pour M. Villeneuve et M. Chalamet. Bon, c'est un rêve d'adolescence pour vous, M. Villeneuve, le roman Dune. Vous êtes beaucoup identifié à Paul Atreides, hein, Fear is the Mind Killer. Comment tous les deux vous avez travaillé, parce que vous parlez de frères et sœurs, de fraternité, d'un amour avec le réalisateur. Donc, M. Villeneuve et M. Chalamet, comment vous avez travaillé ensemble, entre autres pour la fameuse scène du gomme Jabbar qui est assez émouvante. Quelle symbiose vous avez installée ensemble?
Déjà la langue, et on peut plaisanter sur ça, mais franchement d'avoir une tunnel de communication qui était unique pour nous, ça me rassurait, mais après ça, je dois dire, je suis pas content du niveau de seriousness que Denis a approché la matériel, que souvent dans les films ou les adaptations sci-fi, on essaie d'ajouter tellement d'éléments et tellement de trucs qui sont intéressants, et là j'avais l'impression que Denis voulait l'opposer, que l'environnement était vrai, et qu'il voulait les personnages et leur behavior d'être vrais aussi. Et par rapport à la scène de Gomme Jabbar, c'était une prescription comme acteur de mettre la main dans une boîte où on se dit
I don't understand this.
Alors, c'était des deux côtés, d'essayer de faire le rôle du côté réaliste, mais aussi de le mettre dans les mains de Denis et d'avoir la confiance que où il voulait que j'aille, de me mettre à fond, de not question it, et avoir toute la confiance qui est facile d'avoir avec Denis.
Je dirais que Timothée est quelqu'un qui a un intellect très fort, qui est intellectuel, et qui a voulu, dès le départ, quand on a approché le scénario, on a beaucoup discuté, et on a eu beaucoup de discussions intellectuelles sur le film, et sur le plateau, mon rôle était de rapprocher ça, d'aller dans la viscéralité de la scène, puis d'aller les idées d'installer dans la scène. Il fallait aller s'enfoncer dans l'émotion, et Timothée m'a fait confiance. Je dirais que je crois que c'est une des premières scènes qu'on a fait ensemble. Et le fait qu'on travaillait avec Charlotte Rampling, la grande Charlotte Rampling, qui était absolument magnifique, et en fait qui nous terrifiait aussi.
J'ai peur aussi parce qu'on voyait pas son visage.
Non, mais ça a été beaucoup, je pense, ça a été, et c'est là c'est dans cette scène vraiment que le personnage de Paul est né. C'est là que j'ai vu tout le génie, toute la puissance d'acteur de Timothée, où dans un plan précis, je me souviens très bien, où le personnage doit devenir possédé. C'est presque un exorciste, où le personnage devient comme soudainement possédé par une force intérieure qui ne soupçonne pas, qui vient de son inconscient, qui vient d'ailleurs. Et c'est un moment où Timothée, son regard, son visage s'est littéralement transformé devant la caméra. Il y a quelque chose, il y a une charge qui est sortie. Et je me souviens à ce moment, je pleurais de joie, puis je me suis danser derrière la caméra parce que je me disais, ça y est, j'ai un film. Je me suis pas trompé. Et il est Paul. J'étais tellement heureux.
Hi. First of all, congratulations that you finally got to screen the film. And I have a question for Timothy. Actually, could you tell us a little bit more about the sandwalk and perhaps demonstrate it?
There's one of the best choreographers in the world, Benjamin Milpied, who's a director in his own right, who actually actually came up with the sand walk. So the first video I think Rebecca and I would have gotten was a video of him on Santa Monica Beach in Los Angeles doing the sand walk. I'm afraid if I did it right now, I'd be in rhythm, and this whole room would be devoured by a sandworm. So that's a bad joke, but that was another thing to the question we just had in French. That was something that Denis dealt with in a very grounded way. So on set, it wasn't something that, not that we're being too precious or too self-serious, but it was something that was like, hey, let's not be goofy about this. Let's really get this right. And Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, we had the scene in Abu Dhabi, and I think we found the dialogue to it afterwards, but I had to walk down, and hopefully we see TikToks, people doing the same walk and stuff. No.
I'm going to jump in. I remember thinking, I need to study this, and then I thought, no, thank God, I'm not supposed to know it. I can get away with not knowing it and look silly.
I think we have time for one more, and she's been waiting.
Hello, I'm Mazzetto. I have a question for Mr. Villeneuve. You have mentioned before the soundtrack, the big sounds. I was wondering, have you, before the movie, the idea of making the music with Hans Zimmer, or it came along the movie?
Actually, when I decided to make this movie, Hans was the very first artist I asked to come on board. At the time, we were finishing Blade Runner, and I remember having a conversation with Hans, and he if I may, he said to me, you know that it's one of my biggest dreams to score Dune. It's so much of a dream that I didn't watch anything. He did never watch the previous movies. He never watched anything because he wanted to stay virgin. And he said, I hope one day. And he came to Montreal and we had a nice dinner. And we had a discussion about, is it a good idea to try to bring to life one of your oldest, one of your most precious dreams? Is it a good idea to try to do that? And we were not sure of the answer. We did it. And the thing is that Hans started to dream. I remember he gave me his own copy of the book. He said, bring the book in the desert with you. It would be good for the soul of the movie. His old Dune book. I kept it with me, and we started to work for months and months and months and months of exploration. He wanted to bring new sounds. He wanted to go out of his comfort zone. He wanted to approach music in a different way. And strangely, the pandemic came, and strangely, it forced him to find new ways to also to interact with the singers, and that were everybody, all the instruments, all the singers, everybody were trapped in their own houses, and sometimes you had those insane, the best singer on earth that were singing in their own closet, trying to, it was like beautiful to see everybody in their own little bubbles and bringing all this score from everywhere and creating all this, we had one thing that we decided to right from the start, is that it should be a feminine score to enhance the feminine presence that we felt was very, very, very important and fundamental in the book. And so it was something that we both agreed to bring the female strength from the score as well as we did in the screenplay. Voilà.
I'm sorry, I'm told that we're run out of time. Thank you, our guests. Thank you for the film.
For a longer lasting camera to take more pictures, upgrade from ordinary to optimum.
And I'm Lady Jessica in the upcoming event movie, Dune.
The Emperor asks us to bring peace to Arrakis. House Atreides accepts.
Jessica is the mother of Paul.
If anything happens, will you protect Paul?
My life. She has an unbreakable strength in the bond with her son, a royal heir with a far greater destiny.
The future. I can see it.
Skilled at influencing others by wielding the mysterious powers of her Bene Gesserit voice and mind, she must prepare her son to one day lead an army.
It's not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
As the last line of hope to save the universe from falling into darkness. It's time.
You know, I just thought about how much trouble I'm gonna get in with all this music playing. Oh, that was it. Damn. How long have I been streaming? It's gotta be like an hour, right? Yeah. Tekken 101. Onimaru's Mythical Zone, Yokai, and Wano. Beyond Yudo Fruit.
Oh, hi everybody. How are you doing today? Checking and Barry back again. It's fair season right now, so my mom's downstairs baking a bunch of cookies and brownies and all sorts of stuff. This is a double, triple, maybe quadruple chocolate chip cookie. I don't know. There's a lot of chocolate in this, and it's right out of the oven. Kind of sucks that I'm just going to eat this in front of all of you. I don't know what to say. I hope you guys have cookies as well. So yeah, but my God, so good. Okay. We'll get to the video in a second. Just let me enjoy this. Hold on. Okay, so, yeah, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, okay. Do you guys realize that, like, there's more mythical zones in One Piece as of late? Yeah. For something that was referred to once by Kizaru as, like, the rarest variety of devil fruit that exists, remember when Marco first showed up at Marineford using his Phoenix powers, and everyone was like, holy crap, he can turn into a Phoenix, and Kizaru's like, it's even rarer than the Logia class. And so it was like, whoa, mythical creatures, the possibilities here are endless. Although Kizaru did say they were pretty rare, so we're probably not going to see that many of them in the story. Yeah, well, you know what? That's the secret, I guess. They were all in Wano this whole time, all right? So we have right now 7 confirmed canon mythical zone fruits. And out of those 7, we have 4 of them that are in Wano country right now. Technically, we have 8, and 5 of them are in Wano, if you count Momo's artificial dragon zone. But, you know, you could say that's a copy of Kaido's, which it is, so it's not really a mythical zone on its own. It's just like a copy of one that already exists. But still, we have like 4 mythical zones in Wano right now, 3 additional ones that were actually non-canon, one wielded by Patrick Redfield that has the mythical Bato Bato no Mi. So there you go. There's your bat facts for the day. Now, we have another one for later, but here's your bat fact. He's a vampire. Also, he has a pet pen that ate the mythical, it's like a variety of tanuki, so it's a pen that can turn into a tanuki. And then there was also the character from the One Piece X Kyoto thing, which was like before Wano was actually released in the manga, so there was like a different like parallel version of Wano where there's this dude that can turn into a Nue, which is a Japanese yokai, so whatever. But yeah, a lot of mythical zones. And in the last Weaver card, we actually found out that there's another mythical zone added to the midst, and this is yet another mythical variety of the human fruit. Okay, so we all know, of course, that the original variety of the human fruit was consumed by none other than the doctor of the Straw Hat crew, Tony Chopper. He was just a tiny little reindeer walking around in the tundra of Drum Island one day. All the other reindeers were kind of dicks. They wouldn't let him play in their reindeer games. But then he found a fruit that just happened to be shaped like a mushroom, which was very dark kind of foreshadowing for what was going to happen later with Hero Luck and everything. But anyway, Reindeer Chopper was a reindeer, so he pretty much just saw that as like, fruit, and then ate it, and then boom, became a human reindeer with the ability of advanced intellect, where he developed the Rumble Ball, became a doctor, and developed all these extra forms of his devil fruit because of that. So yeah, that's of course Chopper, just the normal variety of the human fruit. But then we also got Sengoku, who ate the human fruit model Daibutsu, which allows Sengoku to just turn into the flipping Buddha. Like, literally. I kept making all those Buddha references when Robin was fighting against Black Maria, like the Isaac Netero fight in Hunter x Hunter against Meruem. But no, Sengoku could legitimately make that happen. Sengoku versus Meruem. Who would win? I guess we don't know a lot about how Sengoku fights. We know he turns into a giant golden Buddha, and he has the power of Buddha shockwaves. Boom! You know, but other than that, we don't really know much else. He's the Fleet Admiral, though, or he used to be the Fleet Admiral. He's still a pretty tough customer, I would say. So yeah, that's a mythical variant of the human fruit there. But no, now we have yet another variant of the human fruit that's also mythical. That is the human fruit model Onyudo, or the giant monk yokai eaten by Onimaru. All right, so you know what? There was a while there where I was really thinking that like the yokai and Wano were just like a legitimate thing. You know, because we saw Tenguyama Hitetsu, who's the Tengu, and then we also saw Onimaru, who's clearly modeled after a kitsune, a fox spirit that can transform, all right? So, and, you know, also Onigashima and the giant, the ancient giant that was there, the skull mountain and everything like that. So I'm like, man, maybe like 1,000 years ago, or maybe even like further back than that, Wano literally was a land filled with yokai and demons and oni and all this stuff, and Kishins and stuff, like roaming the landscape. It was horrible. And then maybe they all just died off at some point, and so Onimaru is all that remains of the Kitsune species, and Tenguyama is actually a Tengu and stuff like that. So, no, it doesn't seem to be the direction that Oda is taking it. However, it is kind of interesting that all of the mythical zones that are based on Japanese yokai or Japanese spirits ended up being in Wano country, which is based off of feudal Japan. Weird. So, Yamato has the Makami fruit, Kaido has the dragon, although to be fair, Kaido did not get his mythical zone in Wano. He's in Wano right now, but he originally consumed that fruit at God Valley 38 years ago when he was 21 years old, and he actually got it from Big Mom. And it's totally possible that the Ua Ua no Mi might have originally been from God Valley. Like, Big Mom found it on God Valley, then Roger and Garp showed up, and this giant battle ensued that, completely wiped God Valley off the map. And then Kaido was about to die. Big Mom viewed Kaido as her little brother at this point, and she's like, here, have this fruit so you won't die. So that's where Kaido got it. As for Yamato's mythical Makami fruit, the wolf deity fruit, I like to think that Kaido did find that in Wano originally, because it was mentioned that the Makami used to be the deity that everybody in Wano worshipped, and then it kind of faded into obscurity. That's the same thing that happened in real life in ancient Japan with the Makami deities, the wolf gods, okay? So that was probably originally from Wano. We also have Orochi's fruit, the Yamato no Orochi. That was also something that Higurashi had and gave to Orochi. Higurashi traveled probably with the Rocks fruit for a little while, from what we understand, or at least went out to sea. So maybe that's where she found the Yamato no Orochi fruit and brought it back to Wano. But it's something that is just very interesting that all these yokai and Japanese deity fruits are found right there in Wano itself. Okay. But yeah, so the Onyudo, this was something consumed by Onimaru. Onimaru is the pet fox of Ushimaru. They were kind of like partners, right? And then eventually Ushimaru died. And so Onimaru took it upon himself to guard the graveyards of the Ringo region to make sure no one, grave robbers would steal the katanas of warriors of days long past, basically. Eventually, Kawamatsu runs into him and they work together for a while. Kawamatsu sets himself up as Hyukimaru, the guardian of Bandit's Bridge. Eventually, Kawamatsu gets captured after Hiyori leaves, and so it's up to Onimaru himself to protect the cemeteries once again, transforming into a giant monk that's referred to as like the thief of weapons. Like he would always steal the weapons from people that would try to come into the graveyards in Wano, right? And so, because Onimaru was supposed to be a kitsune, I just assumed like Onimaru could transform into anything, right? So, no, it is a mythical zone, so we got another one of those, mythical human form model Onyudo. What is an Onyudo? Well, luckily for you, I have a little cheat sheet here for this. Okay, so Onyudos, I guess the literal translation, just by looking at the kanji, is like giant human, giant priest, some variations therein. Now, when it says giant, sometimes they're only a little bit taller than regular humans, like maybe 7 feet tall or something. Other times they're bigger than mountains themselves, like San Juan wolf, Sarume, Zunisha sizes, in some cases, right? Sometimes they look very human, like literally just like a monk that's like really tall, that's an Onyudo. Other times they look like this from the Neo video game series. I've never played any of these, but damn, they look badass. Is that Kojiro Sasaki? I'm not sure. I gotta check out these games sometimes though. But those are also Onyudo there. So that's basically what we're working with here, and there's 4 categories of Onyudo. There's Onyudo, the most common ones that harm human beings, that cause misfortune, or just mess with humans just for the sake of messing with them. There's ones that harm humans. There's ones that aren't actually Onyudo themselves, and this is the category that Onimaru actually belongs to. there are other yokai that just have the ability to transform into Onyudo. From what I've understood with my research, Onyudo is sort of a catch-all term for any giant creature or yokai or spirit in Japanese myth. So if you're a giant, technically, even if you're something else, you could be called. Onyudo is sort of like the broad term for what you are, okay? So that's basically that. So there's other yokai that can transform into giant beings that could be considered Onyudo. And then finally, there's like a random miscellaneous category of Onyudo that, you know, we don't really know much about them, and even in Japanese myth, they're only regarded as sort of like, okay, we're already talking about Japanese myth, but from what I understand with this fourth category, it's like there's cryptids like Bigfoot in Japanese myth. So there's certain stories where like a traveler will run across like a giant footprint in the road that was obviously left by an Onyudo, but it doesn't have any more relevance to the story, and the traveler never meets the Onyudo, never knows what it looks like. It's just like the remnants. Like they were traveling on the road and they saw giant footprints and large heaps of trash, like a giant creature just had a huge meal here and then moved on into the mountains, never to be seen by human eyes again. So we're already talking about Japanese myth, but inside of Japanese myth, we have a subcategory of like cryptids from our world that's like, you know, I'm hunting for Bigfoot, you know, something like that. I don't know. So, like I said, the variety that cause harm to human beings is way more prevalent than any other type of Onyudo. Alright, so giant demons basically, sometimes they cause pain for humans, like they could, like if they're huge, if they're the size of mountains, they could literally just step on cities and wreck towns and just pick up houses and just crush them, like not a big deal. Sometimes they just mess with humans just because they can, you know, like a human is walking down the street and this Onyudo shows up and it's just like, I'm gonna have fun with this today, and just picks them up and just chucks them into the ocean, like, I don't know, just because they can, you know? So they cause misfortune for humans. Then there's other kinds, though. These are a little bit more rare in Japanese myth, but then there's Onyudo that actually help humans. Like, for example, if there's a big task that needs done, like, oh no, the water wheel in our town has been broken or clogged by all these, like, trees and branches, what are we going to do? And then the Onyudo shows up, and he's like a Bob the Builder version yokai. Actually, there was a video I did see with a Bob the Builder version yokai. I'll leave it here if you want to go see it, check it out. But it's pretty terrifying. I think that was Meat Canyon that did that. He does some pretty cool animations. But anyway, so the Onyudo would show up and be like, oh, this is a job for me, you know, can we fix it? Yes, we can. And he like picks up all the trees from the water wheel, and so the water wheel resumes spinning and the town is saved. Or maybe there's something that needs like moved or something, like, oh no, we need this giant mountain moved for some reason, like, I got it, and picks it up and moves it. All right, moving along, you know, that's kind of stuff there. And then we have the other kind of yokai that transform, and so that's like the Kitsune, which there are stories of Kitsune transforming into Onyudo in Japanese lore, which is why, you know, the story exists here in One Piece with Onimaru transforming into Gyukimaru. That's where it comes from, okay? And so it's like a mischievous fox spirit turning into what looks like a large human to either intimidate or to like communicate with humans and maybe to broker a deal. Because a lot of times, and this isn't even just with Japanese myth, but a lot of times in mythology in general, there's a lot of like trickster demons, you know, demons that are maybe pretty small, like imps or like little tiny devils or whatever, and they're not really physically powerful, but their strength lies in misleading human beings, like convincing the human to walk off a cliff, or the little imp or something transforms into a human, like a beautiful lady, and then, you know, they make a deal with the devil by accident, and then they end up going to hell for all eternity. You know, something like that of that nature. Like, there's a lot of stories like that all over the place. And so Kitsune sort of fall into that line where they're little trickster foxes that transform into humans to, you know, convince them to go a certain way in their life, or lead them down a path of misfortune, or just mess with them in general, okay? Now, the case here, though, with Onimaru is that, yeah, he might be a little kind of a trickster sort of fox, but for the most part, he's a good person, right? Like, he basically just wants to follow in Ushimaru's footsteps, you know, his partner that died, you know, 20 years ago. And so Onimaru, by the way, is in his 60s. He's an old fox, which I'm pretty sure foxes don't live that long in like actual like real life. So perhaps this is also maybe a case of eating the mythical zone. Maybe he extended his lifespan. I also talked about this involving Chopper, where I think the average lifespan of a reindeer is only like the teenage years, like 16, 17, 18 is how old like a regular reindeer in our world could live. And Chopper is already like, well, he's 17 right now, but he seems to be like in the prime of his life. And Oda also drew Chopper older. So maybe eating the devil fruits, depending on what kind of zone they are, extend your natural lifespan. Now, some people have said this because that doesn't make sense because there's some like humans that have eaten animal fruits. Like, for example, Dalton ate the bison fruit. And I don't think bison live as long as humans, so that does not mean Dalton should die sooner. Maybe the way it works is like, whatever your natural lifespan is, it can't get any shorter. So Dalton is a human, so if he eats the bison fruit, even if bison naturally in the wild dies sooner than humans, he is a human, so he'll live longer. But Chopper, who was a reindeer, the human's lifespan are longer than that, so it'll default to the human. Maybe that's how it works. I'm not really sure. I'm getting off topic already. But the point is, Onimaru is an old fox. He's like in the 60s, right? And so I'm not sure when he consumed the Onyudo fruit, but whatever, it might have extended his lifespan a bit there. And so, no, he just wants to protect the graveyard and all the katanas, because that's where, like, all of the great samurai of Wano, that was a tradition in Ringo, that when you're born, you're given a katana that you have your whole life, and then when you die, that katana serves as your grave marker, okay? And so even when Kawamatsu first showed up, Onimaru was not very trusting of him. But also it helps that he can transform into a human yokai, but still a human, because it also gives him the ability of speech to actually communicate, right? And it also makes sense when Zoro first ran into Yukimaru, he was able to speak, but he was very kind of stubborn, and even when Zoro kind of like explained his situation, Yukimaru or Onimaru was like, no, I don't believe you, that you got Shusui from somewhere, no, you're just here to steal these swords like everybody else. So maybe a more like animalistic way of just like fiercely protecting his territory, right? So it's like, yeah, he still has the capabilities of being a human, maybe not as high of an intelligence that Chopper received from the regular human fruit, and Sengoku was already a human, of course, but still, up there to the point where he can communicate verbally and stuff, and it's like, hey, I know you're trying to deceive me, you have Shusui. To be fair, Zoro's story about Shusui was like, I got it from Ryuma's zombie. It's just like, even a regular person be like, yeah, I think you're bullshitting me on that one. I'm not giving you back that sword. Right, okay? But yeah, so right now in the story, though, Onimaru, I guess, is still in the Ringo region. There was that moment when Odin showed up at Onigashima, and it turned out to be one of Kanjuro's drawings. But one of the ideas, one of the theories was it might have been Onimaru transformed into Odin, because we didn't know if Onimaru could only transform into Yukimaru, or if there was like other forms that Onimaru could take. But no, it's not even possible that he could have done that now that we learn about the secrets of his fruit. Other than that, and just being a yokai though, like, would there be any abilities that Onimaru could receive other than just being a really big human? Maybe it's something similar to Sanguan Wolf's fruit, because there's so many different varieties of Onyudo, like I said. Some Onyudo are only slightly taller than humans. Yukimaru was pretty tall. I mean, Zoro is about average height, and the Onyudo Yukimaru was like towering over Zoro. So, but could Yukimaru grow to the size of like a building or a mountain if he really wanted to, because that would fall in line with Onyudo? Maybe not, because I feel like if Onimaru had that ability, like he could transform into a giant yokai, he would just do that to maybe kind of liberate Wano. Like, screw this, I'm transforming into a mountain and I'm going to crush Kaido. Probably would have not have succeeded, but it would have been cool to see, and maybe Onimaru would have tried that already, just to be more intimidating. But no, I think this is the only form that Onimaru is capable of transforming into. I guess you get the clothing and everything alongside that. You get the clothing, all the weapons and everything when you transform. Maybe it's like D&D rules. Like, if you have an ability to like polymorph or transform into an animal or something in D&D, and you're wearing armor and a sword or a shield or whatever, it just like melds with your new animal form. And then when you transform back, you get all that stuff back. You don't have to like take off all your equipment to transform. So maybe it's something like that. I don't know. It's also interesting that the way that Onimaru transforms into his yokai form, very unusual, because it's like a puff of smoke, like a lot of the ninjutsu abilities that we've seen in Wano, used by like Shinobu and Fuku Rokuju and Raizo and everybody like that, right? So that was something else that kind of led me to think like it wasn't a devil fruit. It was actually just a natural ability that this kitsune had to transform, right? Now, at the end of the day, I feel like, this is Wano, and Oda's taken a long time to get here, and a lot of this stuff is based on Japanese lore. So Oda is sort of bending the rules a little bit from what we know about, just to make it like more presentable, right? So it's like, yes, Onimaru could have transformed into the Onyudo the regular zone way, like his body actually like polymorphs into the Onyudo, like we see that happen, and there's a hybrid form. We actually haven't seen the hybrid form yet. But to make it more like theatrical and fit with like the Japanese themes here, Oda had him transform in just a puff of smoke, which I think is like the traditional way of how a kitsune would transform. The kitsune wouldn't transform like beast morphers or anything like that. It would be more mystical, more magical. Just poof, and now.
Poof. And that is it for this episode. Yeah, I believe that's it. Yeah, and we filled up the page, man. We got another page down full of some shotguns. So got some shotguns over here. And then, yeah, across this way here. And we're stepping into grenade launchers. Very interesting, man. I love these builds, man. This is probably my favorite part, is just figuring out the bodies, like the main body of the weapons that aren't any of the accessories or anything like that. Yeah, just seeing those, that's really what I'm gravitating towards. All these scopes are beginning to look the same. These bullets are pretty, rudimentary. And then, the stocks are all interesting, but they all serve the same purpose. And, I guess the technology on them is really, like, it is what it is. So there's not too much variation on that either, just like the scopes. So yeah, just these parts here are always very interesting to me, which is why I was kind of disappointed in myself when it was like, this is actually a little bit shorter and stockier than the actual design is in reality. But who cares, right? Like we can bend the rules a little bit here. But either way, end of this episode. I'm G Mr. Drew at G Mr. Drew on all socials. Follow, like, and subscribe. I mean, come on, man. I got the new light. The new light is looking super bright. These streams are looking well lit. It's just another step in the right direction. You cannot question my heart in this endeavor of bringing you these streams and all this stuff, man. It's like I say, it's one step at a time, gonna get better and better. My light went out. I had to go and figure out, and that probably doesn't sound like much work, but last thing I wanted to do was go buy a wrong light, But yeah, so did a little research, got the right light, found this one, and yeah, man, super bright, super working. I like it, and I might even buy more, man, but probably not, right? Either way, I want to thank y'all for watching Andrew Glowczewski Experience episode 253. We're going to keep moving along with more grenade launchers on the next stream. And yeah, these ones are going to get a little more beastie, a little more metal, more metallic, and yeah, a lot more fun, man. These are the heavy hitters of the firearms. So yeah, man, gonna get to look forward to more bulkier things moving forward from here. All right, man. Thanks for watching. Love y'all. Peace.
Woman or something, and poof.